So thank you for sharing. I used to love, as a medical student, reading books by A.W. Tozer. Does anyone know A.W. Tozer, an old theological writer who used to say, what do you think about God? What do you think about when someone mentions God is the most important thing about you? That was very important to me in my growth of actually recentering, refocusing what is the purpose and the plan and the meaning. But that search for meaning, that sense of being able to reconcile difficult things, the question that was asked in the role play, it's a beautiful question. What is it that has helped you face difficult times before? When you go through tough times as a family, what brings you together? Those are very important conversations that we can move to after we've dealt, if you like, with the tricky things at the beginning. We can get on to those really beautiful conversations, and that'll tell us more about that person and family. But if we don't have those conversations ourselves, then we just become emptier and emptier and emptier. You've all seen those pictures, haven't you, of a tap at the bottom? But there has to be something filling up. There has to be something filling up. And I'm just going to share a few thoughts, and then I'm going to just do a little small exercise for us to think of how we fill ourselves up. Okay. Compassion actually is people who work in a compassionate way. There is a lot of evidence that it gives better quality and actually higher satisfaction. How many of you have had patients that have come to you and say, thank you. You really listened to me. You really heard me. You saw me share quotes from Gaza, from refugee situations, from Uganda. And it means a lot to us. That's why we hold on to those. We sometimes put them on the wall, don't we? Because it reassures us and actually helps us feel, I did something good today. I couldn't stop this difficult thing happening, but I did something good about the way I supported that family, the way I supported that person. We have this phrase in palliative care, we talk about, this was one of our founders, modern palliative care, and he talks about the importance of the individual. We will care for you to the last moment of your life. We will help you live until you die. Now, I love this phrase, but sometimes to me that means I am going to ignore my needs and just focus on yours. And I would say to you as carers, all of us are here in CMC because we are really, it's in our heart to serve and to minister. And there will be many motivations that comes from, that we come to that point. Make sure you care. Encourage one another to care for yourselves. CMC team, I can remember bad days, we would have cashew nut burfi. You know, it doesn't have to be very complicated sometimes. Just celebrate and support and acknowledge and empathize so that we can still continue to care for the next person. It's a lesson that I am still learning because my inclination is to not remember to care also for myself. And as we do that, I'm increasingly convinced that compassion needs to also be to the world around us, to a nature, a world where we have not been good stewards. And when we see increasing problems with floods there in your neighbor Pakistan, with droughts in East Africa, with conflicts over so many things, but water, for example, and increasing, I think, even between Tamil Nadu and Kerala, there's not open conflict, but there is problems because of that. So we need to also think of how that compassion, that living compassionately, applies to the world and the planet that we've been given. And this is often our position, isn't it? Like a candle burning at both ends. It's going to meet in the middle and it's going to be painful. And this, again, this lovely series of pictures from this artist. What's the bravest thing you've ever said? Asked the boy. Help, said the horse. And to say that it's not okay. For whatever reason, it can just be today. It can be that that patient reminded you of your grandmother. You're really missing your grandmother. It can be that that child was painful for you as a mother. It's okay to say to your team, I'm struggling a bit with this one. Can you help me? I think chaplains, you often have that role in teams, supporting and caring. Let's make sure we have create cultures and settings where it's all right to say to each other, today's a hard day for whatever reason, and to support one another through that period. Ramu, I know, Mr. Ramu, this was often your role in the team as well. There's a lot written about compassion fatigue. Chitra has mentioned it, all the various ingredients which can go into it. And it can be prolonged exposure. It can also be that sense of detachment, that we're not engaged anymore, we're not working through the emotions. Definitely other life demands. And there may be things that trigger or things that we've experienced, which makes it particularly hard to then engage with suffering. So let us not, even those who, sometimes people say this specialty are full of people that don't really care so much. They're just wanting to operate, or don't let us say that. We've all got different roles to play. It's like that body image, and those of you familiar with the book of Corinthians, everyone having different roles in the body. We all have different roles. And sometimes it is actually the person in the team who is not the hierarchical top we might speak to, because they feel very safe with them. They feel actually they're just like me. So maybe you don't have the whole conversation about the diagnosis, and maybe as a junior person, or as maybe it's not the doctor, maybe you're not having the conversation about the treatment options, but you are having the conversation which sounds like this is a really tough time for you. I'm sorry, this is really difficult for you. We're going to be with you. Maybe you can even help them bring up the conversation, and you can say it to each other. How is your day today? I have a lovely nurse in my team in Uganda. Uganda is very important to greet people. And so I remember saying to her, morning, lovely to see you, Sister Josephine. I'm glad you're here because we have this thing we want to ask you. She said, good morning, Dr. Mhoira. Because in this culture, saying greeting and so on, every time I travel, she sends me messages. I am praying the covering of the blood on your journey every single time. She's one of life's encouragers at every stage. I don't know if you have that role in people's lives, but see if you can be that for someone else, and maybe somebody will do that for you. Here's another quote. The expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is unrealistic, as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet. I think only Peter only managed to walk on water very briefly before he fell. Yeah. So let us think that this is how it's going to be. And I want to ask you this question. What makes you less compassionate? Just think about it. What makes you less compassionate? Because I think everybody in this room wants to be compassionate. Everybody wants people to be compassionate to them. Everybody wants to live in a world and a planet where we care about the nature and the environment. What makes us less compassionate? Tiredness. Brilliant answer. Any others? Emotionally exhausted. We didn't understand. That's why when we block, when we use those distancing tactics, people not only just don't tell us, they feel isolated because people don't understand. I do, and I definitely identify with that one for myself. Anything else? Comfort zone. We're having to move. Now that's a very interesting one, actually. Where we operate best is probably near our comfort zones, mostly. Pressure, or if we're feeling exhausted, then we retreat back into our comfort zones, don't we? And yet, if we want to grow and develop, we probably need to operate just outside our comfort zone, but know that we can move back in again if need be. So that's a very interesting one. Thank you for that. Any other suggestions? Too many demands, juggling too many hats, too many things, family demands, maybe a sick relative. I have elderly parents at the moment, and I'm really struggling to balance being away and yet also wanting to be there and care for them. But do you often hear people say that I'm prioritizing myself? But they think that when you prioritize yourself, so sometimes when we say I have to look after myself, that's a distancing technique actually, because we can't cope. And it's okay not to be able to cope, but it's also important to recognize that we might need support and help in that. Okay, here's just some of the suggestions I had here. I think you've made quite a lot of them. I do mention things like finance and status and so on. Those are important things just in terms of living, but also that sense of meaning and purpose. And our own sickness and health can certainly be there. And there are definitely issues in our organizational, but sometimes our frustrations with the organizations actually stem from being a bit exhausted and tired. Days where I don't handle conversations as well as I should do is usually days when I'm just too tired and I haven't taken time, and then I'm not as able to handle conflict. What makes you more compassionate? What makes you more compassionate? So when people give you a positive response, when they encourage you, absolutely. Faith, that sense that there is some meaning, yeah, or some place we can go to find resources in our time of need. Okay. So having that kind of environment in which the spiritual part of our lives is very, very, very centered or filled. I went to chapel service last night in the college campus. There were so many beautiful songs about Blessed Assurance was one we sang. Isn't that a beautiful song? So it'll mean different things. It might for somebody else mean watching a beautiful sunset, hearing the birds singing as we went out to Snehadipam, the walking round and seeing the beauty of the flowers that are there on all of those things feed our souls. Yeah. Anything else? Good. So yeah, having a job that actually we feel as though we're making a difference and it is satisfying. Excellent. Thank you. Being part of a team, I was just meeting the palliative care team after some time, and I was hearing from various members, it's a team that supports each other. That's really important. Appreciates each other and supports each other. Yes. Sometimes it's also having the skills to do our role, isn't it? I remember teaching some young doctors, I think I quoted one of them, and he said, one of the nurses said, this is my job to have these conversations with patients. She was a nurse in the ophthalmology ward. She says, and I thank God you have given me the skills to do my job well. She felt she wanted to do it, and she really felt a satisfaction that now she could do it well. Here's a whole lot of things here. And you can see how all of these things, I think you've mentioned nearly all of those, are relationships outside work, whether we're fit, whether we're eating well, whether we're doing things that actually mean that we're physically fit is also really important. Okay. Joy and laughter. There's even some societies where they have laughter clinics. Have you seen those? Yeah. Have you ever tried them? I've never tried. At the very idea, and it seems quite ridiculous, but they've even shown that even if you laugh because you are being told to laugh, it actually improves your mood. So, you know, a lot of these things are interdependent, and we should find the right ones for our culture, our society, and try ones you've never tried before. Britain, everybody's going cold water swimming. Have you heard of that? And if you come from Scotland, the water, I promise you, is very cold. And there is actually some hormonal biochemical evidence to actually immersing yourself in cold water. Would you believe it? Okay, I like this one. Is you're mindful or are you mindful? Mindfulness maybe is a term people use quite commonly now, but it means, are you centered? Is your mind focused on something or somewhere which is healthy and refreshing and giving you a source of hope and meaning? Or are you just full, your mind's too busy and you're not centered at all? And there was a lovely seminar from Prime, which is an organization called Partners in Medical Education, which use some of these things. Active optimism. It doesn't mean there's no problems. None of us will live a life with no problems. It means that in the face of problems, there's a sense of coping. We're going to find a way through. We're going to support each other on the way through. We're going to celebrate each step of the way. And we're going to also, if you like, mourn with those who are mourning. Those verses you remember from Ecclesiastes. Okay. So I want us to just do a bit of this. You've done it for me mostly, but let us just fill out this graph a little bit more. And I think we'll just do it by talking. You can write it if you like, but I'm going to ask you to write something in a moment. So tell me the physical signs or symptoms that would give us a clue that we are not doing too well. We're heading for a bit of burnout. Physical signs. Do you know what, Chitra? Can you take one of the things and you can hear better from down there? And just fatigue. Thank you. It's quite hard up here. I think headache.
Not taking food on time. Good. Can be the other way around. Eating less.
Back pain,
aches and pains.
I heard insomnia. Good.
Sleeplessness.
And maybe even sleeping too much. You can't face getting up in the... Okay.
Not able to make clear decisions.
So that's a physical one. That's maybe moving into the kind of emotional, psychological, but sure. Sometimes it's even, somebody told me who was very stressed, says, I can't even decide what dress to put on in the morning. It can become to that kind of decision. Okay. Any other physical things? So that's, yeah.
Choosing
Withdrawing, and I think you're quite right. I'm asking you physical, but you're giving me other ones, which is absolutely fine. So withdrawing, not interacting. Remember, eating too much, not eating enough. Yeah, okay. What other ones? Headache, a feeling of your heart racing, panic attacks. Okay.
Anxiety, panic attacks.
Anxiety, emotional. Let's think of the emotional ones. So withdrawing. Yeah? Emotional now.
Emotional.
Lack of drive.
It's a very interesting one. Chitra, we even have a word, you have a word in psychiatry called anhedonia. Can you explain anhedonia?
Anhedonia is when you do not enjoy the activities that you used to enjoy before. Very characteristic of depression, that you, like a grandmother telling you that I used to spend time with my grandchildren, I used to enjoy, now I don't want to spend time with them. So it's like pleasures of life that you do not enjoy anymore.
Very important. Can be a sign of a depressive illness, but also just can be a sign that we're actually under pressure, and it's like a red flag for us. Anything else you can now add into the social? You said withdrawal, because withdrawal can be an emotional thing, can actually be a physical thing. You don't go out anymore. You don't
mingle.
Yeah, COVID kind of forced us a bit into that, didn't it? But even so, some people are struggling to come out of that and interact again. Any other social things or emotional things?
Substance use?
Very important. And use is better than abuse, isn't it? Because you know, it can even... we shouldn't ever judge that situation, but we should see it as a sign that someone is needing extra help to cope, but unfortunately they're choosing this thing which is going to be damaging to them. Okay. What about your emotions in terms of how you respond to people? Irritability, for sure. Frustration. Maybe getting cross.
Yeah, spending more time on the phone and
your videos
and social media rather than doing constructive work.
Or than interacting with people.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's okay. That just gives you some time out, but it can begin to take over, can't it? Yeah.
Sometimes it's also a vicious circle. You sit through the night watching something, you don't sleep, it affects your work in the morning, kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay. And spiritually, what are our, again, red flag signs that we're spiritually struggling? All of these overlap to a large extent, but can you think of a few more that would...
Feeling of worthlessness, hopelessness,
worthlessness.
not want to do the like pray or whatever you
Mhm.
do earlier, you don't want.
Want to do anymore. Don't want to pray or do any kind of.
For sure. And that may be linked also with the social. It means going out, it means meeting people. They're going to ask me how I am. And so you just withdraw or find a reason to be on call a bit more often. I think those of us in healthcare can find good reasons for not engaging in some of our coming together. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Sometimes being cynical about the whole aspect of, why is this happening? Why is God punishing me? Kind of feel a kind of despair and then start questioning.
And a bit of guilt and blame, blaming ourselves. I spoke to someone like that. Why did I do that? And we can get into quite, okay. I don't think you had any difficulty identifying sources of struggle. Okay?
Yeah, lack of joy.
Lack of joy. Yeah, lack of joy, that anhedonia, very good. So you all recognize that. And as we were saying it, some of you were thinking, I am feeling that way. I had a colleague who did a burnout questionnaire research. He was evaluating the paper.
I think all these came from experience only. It's not something. Either we identify in others or in ourselves. So it's good to have such. I think it's also, this process helps in, kind of reminding ourselves what it could be, what it can be. And if there is, we should, like the horse said, help. That's a brave way to take. I think asking for help or help seeking is a sign of strength and not weakness.
Okay, so the corollary, because rather than waiting until that happens, I now want you to tell me this. Just the same idea. Give me physical, emotional, social, spiritual ways in which we can take care of ourselves. Exercise. Who does regular exercise? It's interesting, isn't it? We all want to, but we struggle for various reasons. Yep. Okay. Anything else?
Anything else? Meditation.
Meditation.
Yoga, meditation.
Lovely. So they can be both physical and spiritual exercises, can't they? Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Healthy eating.
Healthy eating.
I'm not going to ask how many of you do it.
But remember, this is not just about being healthy, that is good, but it's also about what would give us a sense of, we've had a hard day and it's going to actually, sometimes we do things for a treat and to celebrate and to enjoy. So think of things that you enjoy. If you've had a hard day, what is it you go and you think, I really must do that?
Spending time with friends, calling up a friend, watching a movie. Get-togethers.
That's why COVID was so painful, wasn't it? Because we separated off from each other. Anything else?
Deep breathing.
Very good. And debriefing, did you say?
Deep breathing.
No.
Breathing, deep breathing.
Debriefing sessions.
Debriefing. Okay, and that's a very interesting one because Chitra mentioned the organizational structures. So sometimes that can be organizational, formal, and sometimes actually we just need to make sure. I remember a time where I had all of the relationships I had outside work were also relationships where they're asking me for something. So I had not created a circle of support where actually it was somewhere I could both give and receive.
Mhoira, you're talking about debriefing?
Mm-hmm. No, he's not.
For debriefing only.
Debriefing. Okay,
sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. My mistake, my bad.
Don't worry. Anything else? So some time away. I went for a big long walk on the beach with Chitra day before yesterday.
No, day before.
Day before. And that for me is, I love being out in nature, walking in the hills, walking in the sea, swimming in the sea. The bigger the waves, the better. That's what I love to do. Anybody else? Okay, you're having not too bad a time. Maybe, I don't know, I love masala dosa for breakfast. Think of it just practical like that as well. Someone was going to say something?
Going to temple.
Going to the gardens. Beautiful. Taking pictures. I think Mr. Ramu, you like taking pictures. Hobbies. What kind of hobbies? Cooking.
Singing.
Time with family. Giving a child a hug. Yeah, playing. I've seen a lot of tennis happening in the college campus. It took me back to when I used to live there. Anything else? Spiritually? So you've mentioned temples, meditation. So
retreats, prayers.
we just went to Snehadeepam to meet with them about other things, but it was reminding us about the place and the retreat center. Making time for that, being careful to think of how do I fill up again. So what I'm going to ask you to do, take a moment and write, and remember spiritual is about connectedness, meaning, hope, the sense of my purpose, the sense of relationship for many of us in faith. But try and write down 2 things out of each of these domains that you're going to do at least by the end of the week. All right, 2 things in each of the domains. 2 things physically. You're going to eat your favorite food. You're going to cook something special for the people that you love. You're going to go for a nice long walk. You're going to sing or listen to the music that encourages you. You're going to climb up above CMC onto those hills and watch the sunrise or the sunset if you're feeling active. You're going to go and see a movie. Just think of 2 things out of each of those sections and write them down as your prescription for preventing burnout. Try and keep them quite practical, things you can do. Somebody you haven't seen for a while and you're going to call them and maybe arrange to speak or have a WhatsApp call. A big hug for that child in your life or for somebody else. Spending time with your grandparents, they're still here. Please make sure you tell someone else on your list. You know, if it's very personal, that's okay. But just get somebody else to be a little accountable. Did you get that chocolate that you really wanted? Did you have that ice cream? Did you go to Saravana Bhavan and had your dosa? What was it you did? Did you make time for that prayer meeting or that visit to the temple this week that you've been struggling to find time? Have you watched the sunrise? Found your favorite music or song? Chitra has been doing a lot of gardening. That's something you really loved, haven't you? And even in a terrace garden, the beauty of that. Yeah. So just make sure you do them this week, but also begin to have a little bit of a self-care plan. What are you going to do just to keep and stay as resilient and as healthy as possible so that, one, you don't burn out, because it's a very painful thing, burnout for you and for other people, but also so that we're able to carry on being those compassionate selves that we are and care for those that have been brought across our path to care for, and to work in teams where we support one another and accept when somebody is really struggling. So when somebody says something or does something we don't particularly like, see it as maybe that person is just needing extra bit of encouragement or love today, not that they are deliberately giving me a hard time. See if you can just reframe it and see it that way, and make sure that you take your prescription. Don't just write it down. Okay. We've come to the end of the formal bit. We have a little bit of time for questions. You have really listened well. Thank you so much. You've participated so well. But there is an opportunity. Finishes at 5, so it's up to you how much you want to do for questions. But there's an opportunity. Anything you want clarified or any questions, we can just sit here and do that. Jennifer, is that okay?